All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to the January 20th, 2021 wasmCloud community meeting, where we're trying to enable developers to build their functions and services in WebAssembly and run them everywhere. We've got a couple quick things going on, but before we get started, do we have anybody new joining us today? I think it's all the usual suspects. So for our demo today, we're going to have a quick preview. We've got two demos today, actually. We've got a quick preview here of the upcoming developer documentation site. And Kevin, you maybe want to give us a quick little narration through here, some of the things we're going for.
Yeah, so I mean, aside from the obvious, where all of our new product is focused around this one mascot sitting in the egg chair, I think we're basically just going to modify all of our development so that everything is related to this one chair here, and making that guy in that chair happy.
I like the intention with the user journey there. I think there's something to be said for having a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, the general idea is that our documentation has been woefully out of date for a while, basically ever since we started the 0.15 rewrite process. And so now that we're getting ready to push all that stuff out and we're essentially feature frozen, we can start documenting everything. And again, hindsight being 2020, we can learn from some of the documentation failures we've had in the past. And there's essentially 4 different guided paths through the documentation. There's the overview. So if you're just hitting this and you've never seen any of this stuff before, we've got a spot for you to go. If you're an app developer, there's a specific set of guides and tutorials for those. If you're a platform builder, so if you're using wasmCloud to build a platform on top of it for other people, we have use case targeted guides there, and then underneath it all is the reference. And so ideally the overview, the guides for app devs, and the guides for platform devs will all link to the various sections of the reference that are applicable. And then we have the FAQ underneath. But before, our documentation was fairly haphazard and just kind of, it was thrown together organically as we grew, which was good at the time, but we've since outgrown that style of documentation. So I think this should give us a better foundation for making our stuff more discoverable.
Okay, that's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, hey, Kevin, this is Daz. The tagline is quite esoteric. wasmCloud is a secure distributed X platform. Is that just a placeholder, or is that?
That was kind of the definition that we had, Daz. We're thinking something along the lines of a why stop at the edge. Something a little more provocative, or like forward pushing to push the concept, or and we actually have some marketing brainstorm around that. What do you like? I agree that's not a tagline. That's more of like a definition here of what we're, a project description, if you will. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm the naive newcomer, and oftentimes when you approach new technologies, the people that are familiar with the technology are describing it, and of course they know it, so these things are familiar to them. But that, to me, I in truth, I get distributed, I get autonomous mesh, but the rest of it's kind of above my head.
Yeah, I agree. There's a bunch of what that even though it's only one sentence, there's a bunch of context there that, like you said, is probably missing for the vast majority of people that aren't really familiar with what we're doing. So, it is kind of a placeholder, and like Liam said, we're still kicking around the various forms of marketing speak, and trying to distill the essence of wasmCloud down to the first introductory sentence isn't exactly an easy task.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, look, please go ahead.
yeah, to Daz's point, maybe the people who are attracted to this and dealing with it through all this turbulence, maybe good people to just throw out 10 or so descriptions because
Yeah.
we're the weirdos who are really curious and attracted to this for very strange reasons. So you might get some different perspectives.
I agree with you. I agree with you all entirely on this. And I think if we can view this first demo as sort of a call to action here on, we'd love your thoughts and contributions either via Slack, just start throwing stuff up on the wall that we can create a tagline thread or just banding it about. We do have new logos. I was hoping those would be ready for today. We have them in flight. They're not ready, but in the next few days, we'll unveil the proposed wasmCloud logo, and we'll start rebranding this. This branch is set up on GitHub here, so we can start just taking pull requests and thinking. However, I need to get it the Netlify stuff ironed out, so the Netlify pieces just didn't quite pick up.
I have a PR that fixes that. I got it set up about 2 seconds before the meeting started.
Okay, great. So we'll link this on Slack, and I'll link it in the documentation when the Netlify site works. So we all have the kind of placeholder for this. Will be wasmcloud.dev, which will be linked off the new wasmcloud.com landing page, where to your point, Daz, where we'll feature that hero statement a little more crisply and cleanly there. Kevin, anything else to add on this particular demo, or is it okay if I move on to the next one?
No, I think the big thing is that we actively want to see and hear what other people's perspectives are. And so I think, having some discussions around in Slack and on issues filed against the documentation is a great place to start.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate that. In this next section, I want to do a quick overview of, when you're building open source, what you're really doing is building community. And there are certain ways that you need to behave when you're building community. And I think that over the last few months, if you've been around, you've noticed we're publishing our agendas in advance. We've got our little YouTube channel here. Our Twitters are more active and more coordinated. We're trying to spend time writing up GitHub issues. But I've been researching and working through a variety of software tools to help us assess community health and grow the community. So I want to start sharing some call outs on a weekly basis now. This is a new startup that's funded by Andreessen called Orbit.love. And I'm in their kind of like alpha access here and loving it because it's a bit better than the ways that I was doing this before. It gives us the ability to see when new people are joining the community, understand what their reach is, as far as how many Twitter followers do they have, where they're out of, and help us to kind of loop in and identify people that need to be called out for congratulations. So Gustav, I don't think that you're on today, but if you watch this video later, I want to do a quick call out for all your hard work over the weekend and in the last week, with the Brooks on Wash and everything. It's definitely noticed and appreciated. And as we get into this a little further here and we start to have some real crisp metrics around, the sort of active participants, around the total engagement, I'm going to start calling some of this stuff out, so we can sort of set some goals for ourselves on, user growth, community growth, the types of activities we want to see. Are we as a community, are we being welcoming enough by writing GitHub issues? Are we answering GitHub issues quickly, especially with .15, when I think people are going to have a real ability to start using this in production? So any thoughts or comments or questions about this idea, this initiative? Do people like this? Should we do this every week? Or does this feel like, maybe we should just do this behind the scenes?
I'm going to be behind the scenes on this one because, like I said, the first time I saw this stuff, this felt like the other side of ad tracking pixels to me. It felt very stalkery, but that's just me. I know we're not doing anything weird or nefarious, and this stuff is just, scraped off of GitHub activity and things like that. But Yeah, it feels a little awkward.
So I'm hearing that you're suggesting that I just erase this part from the video we share with everybody else.
What part? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think the stats could be creepy, but acknowledgement does a huge amount for building community.
Okay, well, look, you know, the Ralph, what are your thoughts? You know, you manage and run a bunch of open source.
Run is a strong word. Certainly, I participated in a lot of them, and you know, of course, it's really a question of scale. So smaller communities have different dynamics, typically tighter human bonds and so forth. And the larger communities, like the Helm community, which is 3 times as large as the Kubernetes community, has a very, very different dynamic of community. You know, the community network graph and its directionality is very, very different. So I definitely think that there's a lot more that can be done with community, and not only sort of tracking and understanding it, but you know, guiding it and seeing whether it can be used to understand what's going on with your projects and your audience base. But I think the critical aspect. So, for example, I'm the PM for the VS Code Kubernetes extension, which is completely open source and works anywhere and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's offered by Microsoft. So it's, you know, one of those things where it was one of our early projects, and there's, you know, I don't think I'm breaking any rules to say that there are well more than 100,000 daily users of it around the world, which is pretty substantial. And we don't do anything to tie it to Microsoft, and yet there's still that perception that maybe we could, you know, kind of thing. So the stalkerish possibility is there, you know, kind of deal. All that taken into account, I think the highest priority for this kind of thing is not what you do, but whether you're completely transparent. And by that, I want to say that there isn't a single major project out there that doesn't track image downloads, forks, stuff like this. But I don't know any major one that publishes those features, those numbers. So for example, Kubernetes could easily publish, and the CNCF could easily publish download figures for the images of the popular projects. But they don't do that. So why is that? And I have a feeling that this kind of telemetry is stuff that we typically think of as, well, maybe we're tracking people, maybe we're, you know, kind of thing, and we worry about that. I think the opposite is true. I think that if we actually dump more information out, that you honestly and transparently say, we're looking at how many people are participating and how fast they move. Here's a graph of that. You might find that you have a lot more healthy conversations about that in your community rather than fewer. It's this weird non-choosing between tracking and transparency that I think is a mistake in the way that larger projects are currently doing things.
Well, I
felt transparency is definitely the way to go on these things.
I think you could do telemetry up the wazoo if you're completely transparent and dump the numbers out and show everybody what's going on. Obviously de-anonymized and things like that. I mean, you know, there's a limit to anything, but I think a lot of people in open source want to see the numbers. They're, you know, telemetry is one of those controversial issues in open source. Not because people don't want it, but they don't know how to share it. They don't know what they're tracking on, you know, all those kinds of things. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there's some great feedback. So I'm kind of hearing, well, one, the whole reason why I wanted to surface this and raise it to this team especially was to say, you know, one was to be transparent around, you know, how I was thinking and, you know, what I was doing behind the scenes. And I definitely feel like what I hear is that there's a middle ground here where we should share a subset of it, but make sure, to your point, Ralph, it's de-anonymized. And I'll make sure that I do wipe some of the screens I just shared on the video that I post, because I think I did just share like a list of email addresses that is open. Anybody can scrape this right out of
sure,
you know, and all that. But to have it already pre-scraped, you're right. But I'm thinking very hard about it, and we're putting in a lot of time. You know, we're working on, we've got with some of our early adopters, we have some case studies that are in flight that we're going to surface out and share on the new site and things like that. So those kind of marketing and community building activities are in progress, just for general awareness.
Sure.
And I'll take that as a note, and I'll sort of think about how we continue to surface these things generally.
And just one more point, Liam, on that sort of in that general area. It's important and worth noting that GitHub in the projects section, when you can go, if you're nobody in a public thing, you can see some basic metrics, right? If somebody turned that to 100, I think you could collect a lot more information as long as people could see where the information went.
Yeah.
Is basically what I take to be the balance of things right now. And I think there's some blinders on because taking it is different than sharing it. And if you opted to share more, appropriately de-anonymized and so forth, for wherever it makes sense, then you could do a lot more, I think, than people are currently doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on. Community news. We have just as a quick note, the regularly scheduled Wasm time meeting that is on Thursdays at 1 o'clock has been canceled for tomorrow. So that one will happen again 2 weeks after that. I'll get the date surfaced on here for our notes later. And I'm tremendously excited to preliminarily announce Wasm Day for KubeCon EU. I talked to Chris Alphabet about this. He said we could go ahead and start promoting it here. But the day before KubeCon EU, there will be a hashtag Wasm Day conference that will be available. And this will be officially rolled out early next week with a call for papers, as well as some initial scheduling and logistics and organization. So I really hope to try to rally a lot of the folks that are regular contributors here, including the Microsoft team, the Capital One team, the folks from Intel and others, and get them submitted and to help promote some of the amazing things that are happening in this community. And I certainly hope that wasmCloud ends up as a submission for the talk as well. So watch your Twitter feeds early next week for some new landing pages and announcements around that. That's pretty exciting. And then another just item of note is it's a different design philosophy, but it's an actor-driven model, as well as the Dapper team over at Microsoft is rapidly approaching 1.0, and they were featured in InfoWorld this week. It's a good article if you're not following that project. I'll link it out here. And I believe actually that Phil Keaty, who's one of the creators of WAPC, has now joined Microsoft and is working around that space as well in their R&D group. So we have one of our community members is directly connected to that particular team as well. And good luck to Phil on your new role if you're not on today as well. Any questions about community stuff or any, Ralph, Kevin, you guys are in on the Wasm Day as well. Anything that you guys would want to add?
I don't think so yet. You basically the high order bit is that it's happening, and we're really thrilled for that. The nice thing is that it doesn't seem to really conflict with very much going on that day, and so it's and the one thing it does conflict with, which is Edge. You could probably go back and forth between items because we're virtual now. We don't have to be in a room.
Yeah,
stay there. So I think I'm very happy about this as a first effort.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be a great place for us to promote WebAssembly in general around the Kubernetes community.
And there will be, I can also say there will be a Crestlet release relatively soon, end of this week, beginning of next, something like that, with the next bit of goodies, and they come with a lot of goodies.
Is there? Are you volunteering to do a demo next week? Is that what I just heard?
I should volunteer to do a demo. I'll go bother somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, possible demo, Ralph.
Okay.
I'd do that.
Crestlet. All right, I'll get some confirmation on that for the schedule. Now let's turn over to sort of our current business here. Kevin, you had mentioned a possible date for us to rally to earlier. Did you want to publicly say that, or that what we'd like to get done for the .15 release and wrap everything up by?
I think we're aiming for last day of January to have it all ready to go. But there may be pieces of it that are ready to go before then.
Okay. All right. So we'll officially write it down. January 31, 2021 for wasmCloud That's a huge huge milestone there. Bold it, underline it, do all the things. And along those notes, Bill has, I know couldn't make it today, but he dropped some notes around packaging. Can somebody read those out so we sort of have the kind of status on that? If somebody doesn't mind doing that for me, or I can do it. Anybody? All right, so Bill had dropped a couple notes here. Let me just pivot over to his notes. All right, so the default instructions here in packagecloud are going. He's got a couple minor. He's got a bug on one of the Raspberry Pi platforms he's working through, but you can use the existing packet managers here, as kind of like identified off of packagecloud.io/wasmCloud here. So Wash is up here if you want to start testing and playing with that. And it's supported across a handful of platforms. There are, let's see, the homebrew instructions for Mac are in flight. It looks like there's a test version. I'll link the install instructions into our notes if anybody wants to play with the sort of brew cask for that as well. Did I miss anything, Kevin Brooks?
I don't think so. Not on packaging.
Okay.
Yeah, if there is anything, I don't know what it is.
Okay, great. So if you don't mind doing some testing here, depending on what system you're on, we sure could use some feedback as we have 11 days left before release. And I think now over to Kevin. Do we want to drop over to issues, or how do you want to talk through the remaining items?
There aren't really that many items that are being covered in terms of issues. That it's basically still the same as it was before. We just need to finish automating all of the builds and automating the pushes and publications at the end of those build pipelines.
Okay. All right. So to that end, what about the I think the only thing remaining to kind of talk about is we have the what the actor interface is, right? Is that the biggest piece of dev here that's remaining to be knocked out?
So we have the actor interfaces for Rust that we need to do. We have the core sample ones for TinyGo that need to be started and finished. There's and then there's making sure that all of the capability providers are upgraded to the new actor interfaces, and then making sure all of our samples are upgraded to the new actor interfaces.
Okay. Is this the biggest piece of work that's left here on
Yep.
.15? Okay. And the sort of guesstimate is with the examples that are provided that, these are, pretty small units of work. These are all small t-shirt sizes.
Yeah, so not all of them are not all the ones that you've got on the screen are scheduled for ODOT 15. We're gonna follow up after the release with some of these. Like we're not doing the assembly script actor interfaces until later,
Okay.
and things like that.
Okay. All right. Well, if anybody can jump in and help on these, I think this is kind of feels like one of the longer polls next to documentation. Brooks, anything on Wash you wanted to call out?
I think echoing where Kevin's at, where we're pretty much feature complete for wasmCloud. Same deal for Wash. I think you said it earlier, but just to make sure it's known, big props to Gustav for doing work and getting a fairly big PR into Wash, and he added the feature to get all the commands in the REPL, not just the command interface ones. So hats off to him for doing that. I've filed a few issues across mostly Wash, one on wasmCloud that's mostly just user experience stuff that'll make it better for the initial experience for somebody following a tutorial. So I'm working on those alongside the actor interfaces so that when somebody visits our documentation site, does that initial tutorial, it's crisp and it's good. So that's the main call out.
Are there any of these? I see you've got a couple tagged out for help wanted. Are there any that you'd want to call out that you'd like, maybe a second set of eyes on?
So what I've also tried to do here, I have this 0.2.0 and 0.3.0 milestones, and these are kind of soft milestones. But what I'd like to do is release the 2.0 release with wasmCloud 15, just to kind of segment off a release like our like wasmCloud is doing a minor release. So those 2.0 ones are ones that I'd like to finish by the end of January. So if any of those have good first issue or help wanted on it, please take a look at those. Some of them are pretty easy punts, easy things to do. I just filed the issues for anything that I thought about that should be done by January.
Well, I really appreciate that, Brooks, because I think when you think about what are the behaviors that we need to embrace to be a welcoming and inclusive community and sort of invite people to have this Pokemon persona journey where they start as users or interested and then they make their first contribution, this is exactly how we need to behave in order to be good stewards of a community. So thank you so much for setting a great example and helping people to get in and make progress and things like that. Here's a question I have, and this is maybe to Kevin and Brooks. Should we pin the Wash minor versioning to wasmCloud so you always know that if I'm on .15, I should be on .15?
I don't think it's going to work that way. Honestly, I think, having this implicit dependency on version numbers creates more confusion than it clears up, I think, because if we do our jobs right, then the communication protocol between Wash and the wasmCloud should continue to function, even as wasmCloud goes through 0.16 and 17 and so on. They have independent release cycles for completely independent reasons. There are things that will be added to Wash that might be considered breaking changes that have absolutely nothing to do with wasmCloud.
Okay, right. Okay, all right, well, good. So anything else? Just sort of an open call here on wasmCloud, and then we can open up for any other topics.
I do have one more thing to bring up that is a dependency for wasmCloud and for Wash. We have issues in both repos to remove all of our Git dependencies, which is mostly going to be on us for releasing the crates that we're working on that we're depending on. One in there is the OCI distribution crate, which I know Crustlet is planning another release. I think when we asked in our last community meeting, it was going to be 2 weeks from then, so it should be coming up soon. So
I'll follow up. I don't know.
Okay. I just wanted to check in on that. I think it was either Taylor or Matt, one of the Matts that planned the release for about a week from now. So that's something I just wanted to follow up on.
And then the .2 milestone request for Wash. All right. Well, we've got a great backlog of topics here. I would encourage folks that have stuff pinned out here. Ralph, you've got a couple for Microsoft. Chris, I don't know if the Crustlet Critical Stack demo is possible, but that would be a great little demo to sort of, get people excited about, those kind of things. Let me know when you feel like you'd be ready to do those demos, and we'll get there. I'm also going to drop out into our Slack a call for our wasmCloud release party. So we'll do a big open call, and I think half the folks on the call have been through that motion before. You just give me your address, and a box of flavored snow globes shows up for you to enjoy on a shared community call. So watch for that. Dropped out. All are welcome, and we'll have a good time. Any other topics we wanted to throw out there for anybody?
So the demo script, I was revisiting that, trying to go through it now that getting closer to 0.15 again, and I can't get through either of the examples due to due to commands that either don't exist or inconsistent flags options. So if you have like a cheat sheet of stuff that I can use to update those, so I can get through that on my side, then I'll contribute to the documentation. But yeah, that's I'm stuck trying to get through that right now.
That's awesome. And you did record your experience, right, and share this in your demo notes?
Yeah. I'm trying to just build a reproducible development environment, and then going through these this demo to experiment with it, and the notes are at the bottom.
Great. And if it's all right with you, I'll just add you to the GitHub repo, and we can create this repo there if you want, for building things out and like keeping track of this there. That would it might help more people to contribute here, and I'll make sure I link this in the notes as well. Thank you so much for running through this and helping us to run through what this first experience is like.
No problem.
Great. Awesome share, by the way. What else? Anything else that we wanted to do, or I think that's we'll call it a wrap. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop recording, but we can go ahead and hang out afterwards. Have a great week.